Good morning, everybody. Michael the Maven, and in today's video, I am going to show you how to scientifically and objectively test your ND filters. There are a lot of great ND comparison videos out there, but something I've been struggling with for a long time is scientifically measuring things of color science. Those fall a lot of times into preference, where it becomes more about opinion, where we look at something and say, hey, oh, those colors are beautiful. And we can't really describe, why we feel that way. That's opinion, but there has to be a scientific way to measure the color performance of ND filters. And with that in mind, I have to say thank you to our sponsor, B&H Photo, for providing the many filters, the many very expensive filters we're about to see in this test. B&H has been a great partner, and in the conversations that I've had with them, they have always told me they want me to find problems with the gear that they sell. The reason being is they're all about customer service. They want their customers to have an excellent purchasing experience when they buy gear, and so they don't want to sell gear that may not be the best. So thank you to B&H for supporting this. I really appreciate it. And there is some history about ND filters, and a lot of this came through my own personal frustrations of going down to the beach and using these really dense ND filters. We're talking about 6 to 10 stops, and finding this color cast time and again. This went on for years, and what would happen was I would buy another filter and I'd go to the websites and read the description. It says color cast free, 100% neutral. That is what the word neutral density means. Neutral density means there should be no color cast. Now, for some people, this isn't a big deal. They don't mind going in terms of workflow and correcting it in post, or maybe doing a white balance shot beforehand. But to somebody who does very long exposures and wants to do them on a high performing level, the extra step of white balancing creates some problems. For every time the light changes and needing to rebalance the camera, well, now you put the filter on, now you got to rebalance the filter. If you're doing compositing shots, it becomes a problem. When we're talking about gradients, that's a huge problem to have color casts. And from my experience, what I've seen is that most beginning and intermediate photographers really don't understand what's happening when they go out and they buy a filter and they put it on, and it's actually not really that great performing. I feel like they're being taken advantage of. That's the hard truth. So today we're going to be talking about a very easy test that pretty much anybody can do in the comfort of your own home with the filters you already have, and you will be able to scientifically measure their performance using a 3-point test I've been developing for some time. Now, there are several other characteristics we can talk about in regards to the filters themselves. For example, how accurate they are in regards to exposure. What are some of the other performance things like? Are they nano coated? For those of you that don't know, the nano coating, Canon and Nikon have come out with papers that said they improve the transmittance. It's very difficult for me to see a difference between a nano-coated and a non-nano-coated in regards to certain kinds of tests, so I don't think we're there yet. But I will say the nano-coated filters tend to stay cleaner a lot longer, and they're easier to clean up when they do get dirty. It's a hydrophobic surface. For me, the color cast neutrality and the speed in which I'm able to keep my filters clean in terms of workflow, those are critical because it keeps me in the shooting. It doesn't introduce all these extra steps. But we're going to put them all to the test, the ones that I have, and take a look to see if they are truly color cast free. The first is the ICE 1000 ND. This is an 84 by 98 millimeter. Its cost is $40. Then we have a Haida 10-stop filter, and that comes in at $76. We have the HITECH format Firecrest, which is $123. We have a big brand name, the Lee Big Stopper, that comes in at $129. We have the Cokin Nuances, and this was tested at 150 by 150, but they do have a Z Pro size at 180. We have the B&W XS Pro Nano, which comes in at $189. We have this brand I've never heard of called VU. Again, this is a 150 by 150. It was $235. There was a NISI kit, 4 filters for $500, and we have a brand new newcomer to the block. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the Maven ND1000. This is a filter that's been in research and development for me for some time, and I finally have one that we will be releasing in a couple weeks, and this is going to be priced on my website at $150. But instead of me talking about the filters, let's get into the methodology and look to see how they perform. The test works like this. We're going to start off with a white backdrop, something that should be evenly lit. If it's not evenly lit, you may get some variation. We can check that with the control. I'll demonstrate that. So the idea is to get a custom white balance here. Then we're going to put up some markers that will allow us to know exactly where we are sampling colors from. And then we're going to take a control picture. The control is essentially the test data without any of the variables changed. So we're just saying, what should the color look like if there's no filter at all? Then what we're going to do, I'll flip it over to manual, and we'll add 10 stops of shutter speed. So 10 times as much light, and we'll start dropping the different filters onto this. I have a Cokin Z Pro filter holder on here. We'll start dropping those in, and we'll take another picture or two for each filter. And then we'll take those images and we'll bring them in to Bridge. I like to use Camera Raw, and that'll allow us to inspect them. And if we do this test right, and if the neutral density filters are not creating a color cast, they should look, at least to the naked eye, pretty much exactly the same as the control. And so you are about to be shocked in terms of how bad some of these filters are. Some of them are okay, and then we have a few that are really outstanding. So the first step on this, I like to use, I've done this test a couple times now, so I know that in order for the range for me to get, I'm at f4, ISO 800 with a shutter speed of 1/100th of a second. I'm going to come into my custom white balance. We're going to sample from the middle there, and it's asking me to assign where I want it. It gives us the reading of the light that I'm shooting in. I'm shooting with LEDs. So we'll just assign it to number 1. So now that the camera's custom white balanced, a couple other things I need to point out, I'm going to change my display, is that this Z Pro filter holder, it has a little bit of vignetting in the corners. And some wide angle lenses will also naturally vignette. If you're shooting at 15 millimeters, there's nothing you can do about it, especially when you're stopping it down. So just be aware of that. And all I'm going to do in the case of this test is I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, something maybe 45, 50 millimeters, something like that. You can still see we get a little bit of that vignetting there from the filter holder, but that's okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up 3 little gaffer tape marks. So what I've done here is I've set up 3 different points, and these are going to allow me to have a reference point when I take the color dropper to measure how much the color has shifted here. At this point, what I'm going to do is, and another thing, this helps with the focusing if you're worried about that, I'm going to take a control picture. We're at a nice even exposure. This is why I'm using aperture priority mode, is I'm letting the camera dial it in nice and easy. You can see we're shooting in RAW and JPEG, right? So I'm going to flip this over to manual mode. Obviously, it has my last setting on here. And so this was my setting in aperture priority mode, 1/100th of a second, f4, ISO 800. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the shutter speed, and I'm set up on 1/3 stop increments. So as I change this, I'm just counting a stop for every 3 clicks. So 1, 2, 3, there's 1 stop. 1, 2, 3, there's 2. 1, 2, 3, there's 3. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that is 10 stops overexposed. And the reason why we kind of want to do that is also to check for the exposure of the ND filter, and we'd be able to see that as a shift. So with all this in mind, now we're going to start bringing the different filters in. And something I kind of do sometimes is I'll jump back and forth between aperture priority and manual if I need to refocus it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start dropping these filters in. And I might put up a little note card in the bottom right-hand corner so I know which one is on the image. I'm going to take those pictures, and then we're going to talk about them in Lightroom. When we're all ready to go, I'm going to put it on a 2-second timer so I don't shake the tripod. We want these to be consistent. I'm going to drop this in. So this is the Haida filter. I'm going to put the marker up so I know which one it is. I like to take 2 shots just in case something goes wrong with the first one. Long exposure. And I'm going to also check the focus point once it's done processing. So when we come in and we look at this, we can already see pretty significant color cast. This is the Haida filter. This is the filter that said it was absolutely positively neutral density. That is not a neutral density filter. That's something else. That's like color shifted to blue filter. But anyway, I'm gonna go through each one of these now. I'm just swapping filters out, taking 2 shots and refocusing, and I'll see you guys over in Lightroom and Bridge when we'll analyze these. So now that the test is done, I wanna show you the files themselves. I'm going to make these available by Dropbox if you guys wanna check them out for at least a couple months and poke around and see what I did. If you wanna, scrutinize the work, or if you wanna check your own. I've labeled this as the control. There's a first control, and there's also a Z control, a final control. And then I relabeled all the names of the different filters in here. And on first glance, I mean, it's pretty easy to see that there are color shifts from filter to filter. And this is what these filter companies, they don't want you to know. They don't want you to test them. So the first thing I would recommend is just take a look at the different thumbnails. And thumbnails are not even the full resolution, but I can tell you right now that there's color cast in every single one of those filters that I just selected. And then we come down to some higher performing ones. There was a couple of them that actually did pretty good. And I'm going to show you how to test these, but just looking at the color of these images, you can tell right away that there are dramatic differences between them. That's just at a glance of the thumbnail. Now, I'm going to get into some pretty nerdy stuff now, and if you want to jump to the end of the video to see who the winners were and the grades I gave them, check out the table of contents in the description. For those of you who are high-end shooters, pixel peepers, let me show you an advanced way in terms of how to test these. And so what I'm doing is you can select the control with any of the different tests that we did, bring it into camera raw. I thought the B&W filter did pretty good for color cast. The problem with it is there is an exposure shift. So I would not grade this as a 10 stop filter. This is more like a 9.3 stop filter, and you can see that shift in the histogram. And there's also a shift in the color. So when I was developing this test, I wanted a numeric way to unbiasedly score the color cast. And this is how I think it works pretty well. You can do this both with JPEG and RAW files. The JPEG is a little bit easier, I think, for beginners because it's going to show you the shift from what should be a neutral tone. So I got my white balance picker, and I'm coming down here, and I'm just clicking right above the target, 0, 0. That makes sense, right? It was balanced even. So those two numbers, the color temperature right here is the blue to the yellow, and then we have the magenta to green. That's the second number. So what I did is I went through each of these individual test shots, and I scored with the white balance clicker, 0, 0, 0, 0. And when we get to the extreme corners, we start seeing some interesting things. I'm trying to stay right above this target, but I would do 2 or 3 clicks when they were getting a little bit funky, and I was trying to take the best average. So in this case, I would score this one as +1, +4, trying to look for the best performance. This is just the control, by the way. With that information, I would come into my spreadsheet, and so the control was scored at 0, 0, 0, 0 for the first two, +1, +4. So it had a total variation number from 0. I give it a score of 5. This is the control. So the next thing that I would do is then I would come in to the next filter. This is the ice one. Take my color picker, and I would come in here and pick around, try to find something, a good average score for each of these spots. I'm just choosing here. And then I would come in to my score sheet. So in this case, this was the B&W. Here it is. And I would score what the best average score was about. And I would compare these numbers with the control. So this isn't the total number. This is the number that's different than the control. Okay, so I'm adding up how far away it is from the original filter. And I did that for each and every single filter. This is the score for the pixel peepers. If you guys really want to get into this, and there were 3 performers that were so bad that I actually think the companies need to come out and apologize and probably do a product recall. That's how bad they are. The ICE 1000 ND, it's a $40 filter. The problem with is its overall score was the worst of all of them with a color shift rating of 228. That's an F, in my opinion. Haida, If you look at their packaging in their box, in their promotion, they say this is a complete color neutral filter. It's $76. Okay, so that's a lot of money for a beginning photographer. Has one of the worst scores as well. It's actually the third worst score. In this company, Lee Big Stopper, Lee is a huge filter company, and they have been producing the Big Stopper for a long time, but it is very easy to see that it has an extremely strong color cast. They charge $130 for this filter, and it had the second worst score out of all of them. And the thing that drives me crazy is if you come in to B&H's website and you look at this Big Stopper filter, there it is. This is the one we tested. 192 reviews. It has a rating, so 169 positive 5-star reviews. It's one of the worst filters I've seen in terms of neutral density. So something's happening here in terms of the reviews. How are they getting so many positive reviews? Do people just not know what's going on? This is not a neutral density filter. I wouldn't even grade it as a neutral density. I would grade it as a blue filter, a bluing filter, or something of that nature. And so I'll provide you guys with the spreadsheet for the scores that I've done. If you want to do it with raw files, it looks a little bit different. We're going to say yes. So if we were to come in and compare raw files, it gives you the temperature in terms of Kelvin and tint. It's the same sliders, you just have a little bit more leeway. It's a raw file. And so you would grade this on the shift of Kelvin temperature. Anything within 100 to 150, maybe even 200 Kelvin is pretty good, and with a tint within reason. And so if we come in and just look at, let me show you just the JPEGs. Let me select all these guys and bring them in. At a glance, just scrolling through here, when you go side by side with the control, it's pretty easy to see. Most of them, oh, look at the Maven. Look how well the Maven did, right? The Cokin nuances in the VU were actually pretty good. They're pretty expensive and they're hard to buy as singles. But out of all these images, the one that really did the best, and I feel weird saying this because this is a product that I make, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, what the heck? If you look at these side by side in terms of color cast, remember, this is a 10-stop filter. Okay, so it's going to reduce all but 1/1000th of the amount of light coming in. For an ND filter, this is extremely good performance. In terms of the score with the eyedropper, the Maven filter ND 1000 scored at 9. I'm very happy. I'm very proud of my filters. But the important thing is that you know now how to test your own filters and come to your own conclusions, and you're going to get better value when you invest your money into an ND filter, whether it's mine or somebody else's. And that's just something I want you guys to know and to arm you with that knowledge. Before we talk about the winners and losers, something I have to point out, at least in this test, that was very interesting to me was that I was wearing a shirt like this when I initially did the test. And when these 10-second exposures were happening and I was standing in the room, there was a color cast actually bouncing off my shirt on to the test board. So if you do these and you're in the room, make sure you are wearing a neutral free shirt as you're waiting for the exposures to happen. When we're talking about the scores for the 3-point color test that I just demonstrated, the winners in number 1, the first place was the Maven. That came in with a score of 9. Obviously, we want these scores to be as low as possible because they show how many color points they shifted from the control. So with 3 different points at 9, that's an average of 3 color points per area, which is a pretty incredible rating, I believe. I also threw in the Maven ND64, which is a 6-stop filter. That came in at 12. And then we start looking at some of the other filters. Now, when you download the files, if you look at them, what I would say is just take a glance at them. In glancing, ask yourself if you can see a color shift difference between the controls in any of the test files. If you can't see a difference, you're probably going to be happy with it and it's not going to matter. But if you do a glance over and you can see that there's a significant difference, then you probably might want to start rethinking the ND filters that you're using. Again, most of this for me is about workflow and ease of use. The next highest rated one, I have to give it to the VU. I've never heard of this company before. They're based in Germany. Very similar to the Maven, I felt, when we look at it side by side, and that got a score of 19, which is a really awesome score. score. In terms of color cast score, next we have the B&W XS Nano at 22. The problem I had with it was there was a noticeable shift in exposure. I really think this is at like a 9.3 stop ND filter. I don't give it the full 10 stops. And it has a slight color shift, not bad. And then we start looking at the Cokin nuances, which I also thought was a super high performing one. That came in with a score of 26. Now, having talked about those first sets of images, for the most part, that's when you really kind of have to look to see a difference. I can see it pretty easily up to 26. Over that 26 number is when it becomes much more apparent that there is color balance issues. So the next place we have the format HITECH Firecrest, which got a score of 28. And anything above that, then we start getting into heavy color shifts, in my opinion, especially when we're getting in the 30 range. And so the next runner up, we have the NISI. I felt the NISI was pretty good. It wasn't spectacular. Now this is an infrared kit, and I have a lot of friends who love the NISI filters. I'm sorry guys for putting it so low, but I'm just reading off the numbers as I go down this list. After the NISI, we have the Zome, and this was a size P. I've had it for a long time. It was glass. I paid $54 for this thing, and it got a score of 69. This is when we start getting into the progressively far worse color filters. After the Zome, we have the Haida, which is a $76 filter. That comes in with a score of 141. The thing that I was disappointed about this product is that if you look on the box, if you look on their website, they are emphatic that this is 100% color cast free. And what I'm saying in the tests that I've done, it is nowhere in the ballpark. After the Haida, we have the Lee Big Stopper. Lee is a huge brand name in filters. The Big Stopper has been around for a while. I believe I've purchased one in the past. I don't still have it. $130. It has a color cast score of 176. That is not a good score, and it's $129 to buy that filter. I really feel that should no longer be classed as an ND filter, in my opinion. And then in last place, we have the ICE 1000 ND. The version I tested was $40, and it has a color cast score of 228. So I feel better when I'm able to objectively measure something using a tool that you have access to. I'm providing all the files. If you guys want to take a look at them for yourselves, come to your own conclusions. This is the only Maven ND filter right now. I'm very proud of it. And again, it's coming out in a couple weeks. For those of you who have been longtime supporters and enjoy my videos, if you're in need of a really high-end ND filter, we're gonna have those on pre-order up to the time they become available for $99. It's gonna be a steal if you get it from my website. I really hope in the future that B&H will carry them. That's just a conversation I have to have with them. There's a number of steps we have to go through. To my students and those who are just beginning and getting started, the recommendation I want to make to you guys is start off with a really affordable, low-cost kit, even if it's a junky ND filter, just to see if this is something that you want to get into. There are a number of plastic ND kits that you can get out there for less than $30. I would say start there. I really don't like the medium grade ones. When I say medium grade, I'm talking about the ones priced between $40 to like $110, because most of those perform as poorly as the really low end ones. Get a low end one, work around the white balancing issue until you're ready for more, and then buy a filter that you're going to use for the rest of your life. And now that you know how to test it, you'll be able to tell pretty quick. And that's what we want from filters. We don't want to have to buy filters over and over and over again. I've spent thousands of dollars on filters, and I think that money's better invested into just a couple that you're going to use for the rest of your shooting career. So in conclusion, the main thing I hope that you're pulling away from this video is that you now know how to test your ND filters, whether it's a full ND filter or a grad, something you have, maybe something you've purchased. And the beauty about buying from B&H Photo is that if you're unhappy with the gear that you buy from them, you can return it within 30 days, no problems. It's one of my most favorite places to buy my gear for that very reason. I'll have a number of links down below, including all the filters in this test. If you guys would like to see some more Maven filters outside of the sizes and the densities that we talked about, let me know in the comments below. I thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time.